walkthrough, engine upgrades, getting exhausted and staying cool. Back when the car looked like this, the engine looked like this. Let's start making some changes. First, easy change, new valve cover. I bought this one in a blue color, and I added some metallic flake to it to make it match the rest of the blues better. I also replaced the radiator, added an overflow tank, and added some relays to run the headlights and the third light. This takes the power load from the switch on the dash and transfers it to the relay. Now the switch just handles an on and off signal. Next, degrease the motor and paint the block. I get in there good and spray it with a high heat blue, and then I dust in some metallic to make it sparkle. We paint the rest of the engine bay and the components with black or silver as necessary, and I replace the ignition coil. I add some new wires, and that'll do for a while. Now that it's pretty, let's open it up some. Next, I buy an exhaust system. I want a dual pipe center exit, so I grab a Sportex silencer and an LCB exhaust header from Minisport. I pull the old manifold off, and I make the discovery that the Mini's factory exhaust is also half of the factory intake. So, yeah, it's just one big chunk of iron. My guess is that maybe the idea was to heat the air-fuel mixture with the exhaust gas for emissions purposes or something, but I've always been under the impression that the colder air into the engine is better for power, so attaching the hot exhaust to the intake manifold doesn't really seem like a good idea to me. Leave a comment if I'm missing something. Now I have to source an intake manifold as well. So I go back to the Minisport website, but the only one I can find is for an HS4 carb, not an HS2 carb. This will be a bit of a problem, but not too big. I'm just going to make an adapter out of a 1/4-inch steel plate. Could I have just bought one, you ask? Yes. However, I found that out after I fabricated this one, so on to the fab work on it. First, I started out with a plate of 1/4-inch steel, and I rough cut the adapter based on a cardboard template that I made. Insert YouTube CAD joke here. I use a stepper bit to open the hole up to match the HS22 opening, and I add a bevel to create somewhat of a smooth transition to the larger opening in the new manifold. I then drill 4 other holes and bevel the opening to accept some flat hex socket cap bolts. The 2 larger holes I weld in some socket bolts facing the carb side so I can put nuts on them from that side. I test fit it and realize one of the sides of the plate collides with the choke cable and the throttle linkage, so I notch one of the sides to give it clearance. I have to notch the cap bolt as well, so I do. Quick test fit later just to make sure it's good, and I'm ready to install everything. First I line up and bolt in the tiny little header, and then bolt in the intake. I'm not going to be hooking up the coolant lines on this. I believe those 2 bungs on either side are, again, to heat up the manifold. Once again, I think that logic says that this will equal less power, but maybe it's useful in a cold climate, but I'm in Florida, so not so useful. I paint the little adapter I made red with some high heat paint, and I make my own gasket out of some gasket material. I then reattach the carb, I hook up and hang the rest of the 2-inch exhaust pipe, then hang the silencer, and that's that. A wrap on the exhaust. Sounds nifty too. Since that radiator blows out the side with the fan, it doesn't really do much when I'm parked at a light, so the car tends to get a little bit hot. Just when I'm sitting at a light. Once I'm moving again, everything's fine. So what I want to do is to add a secondary radiator over into this area right here, but it has to be a little one. So what we got was the heater core off of a 1966 GMC truck, and this will do its job. So what I did was I bought a little small fan. It's already mounted on the back side of it, and this is just hooked up to a 12-volt source, and I'll have a switch inside the car. I already started fabricating the bracketry for it. Nothing super fancy. It's just this bracket right here, and the radiator will slot onto that, and then just welded up a couple pieces of this angled steel that I had laying around, and this has a little slot on it to go onto the housing here. When I was test fitting everything, I broke a bolt off in the head, so I have to fix that. So what we're going to do is drill it out, and if I can back it out, we can do that. If not, then we'll probably end up having to helicoil it or retap it. Okay, so I had to remove the valve cover because I couldn't get the tap and die tool to spin properly. Tried with a wrench, but it still needed some more work. Here is the hole all reopened back up. I'm going to get a file on there and just clean up that extra little bit of debris in the old hole, and then we'll get a gasket on this and get this back together. There's the plumbing all buttoned up for the hoses. Next thing we'll be doing is hooking up power source and a relay. Get that fan going. To further help with the cooling, I'm going to replace the thermostat. So I popped the housing off, and there's not a thermostat in here. I guess I never checked that when I got the car. So let's correct that. First I'll clean up the housing, put the new thermostat in, and bolt it all back together. I also added a new radiator cap as mine's been leaking a bit. Okay, so my Mini has a oil filter down there, and the way these oil filters work is there's a little canister that you pull down, and then there's a little filter that's inside of it, but I'd much rather have a spin-on filter. So we are going to take the oil filter adapter off and convert it to a spin-on filter. Let's see what the process looks like that. I'm gonna have to take this grill off, probably gonna have to take the light off, and see what else is in there that we're gonna have to get out of the way. So by turning the grill like that, I didn't have to take out that actual spotlight. So here's a better look at the oil filter. So I just have to get these out of the way. We're going to tie those up a little better. Take off the oil pressure sending unit and this little bypass valve there, and we'll get the new piece put on. Here's the replacement one, and I have this sneaky feeling this one's not going to work. If you look at the way the oil galley is up there, I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll find out and take this apart. Alright, so we got that off. We have it draining. Here's the weird thing. That goes like this. Those lines, those holes don't really line up. Not sure if that's a problem or not. It'll still apparently fill the oil. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but yeah, I don't know if this is the right fitting for this exact motor, but we're gonna get it on there and see if we can't make it not leak, but I think it'll be all right. So we just have to pick up some oil. I somehow don't have any. Just run to the parts store and finish this up. Well, that's it for the mini mods for now. One day I may decide to do some more radical modifications to it. Insert VTEC engine here. But for now, I'm just going to keep it in my rotation of daily drivers. Thanks again for watching. Please consider subscribing and leave a comment if you have any good ideas on what should be next for the Mini. Stay tuned for some more car and tattoo related videos.